Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. I'm Brian. This is my kitchen, Mr. Smith. And today I thought we'd do some baking. If you are new to my channel and this is your first video, first time watching, hey, I'm really glad you found me. If you're returning to the channel for more shenanigans, adventures, or at least to learn something, I'm glad you came back. Always appreciate anybody who watches my videos. I always hope you guys get something out of them. Yeah, to tell you a little bit about our channel, which most of you already know, Tuesdays we just sit around and talk, find a timely topic, or other things. But we talk about things. We try to. My main focus on Tuesdays is current events or social equality, inequality. I try to talk about somebody that's done something really cool. But I mean, it's whatever topic you choose in comments or I think of through the week. Wednesdays, we try to cook dinner. Thursdays, we try to bake something, but we also do some canning. We do a little bit of woodworking. I still do some fish keeping. You'll see my old fish room in my first couple of videos that got me started down the YouTube path, and a lot's changed since then. But anyhow. Today, we're going to make another cheesecake. I made a cheesecake 2-3 weeks ago. I had the video for it. It's in the baking list. But and that's Sarah, my daughter. But we're going to do this one a little different. We're going to do a pumpkin cheesecake. And the last one we didn't do in a water bath. It was actually a very simple cheesecake. It was an easy cheesecake. It turned out fantastic. It got raving reviews by everybody that tried it, which was a few more people than just the family. And this time around, we're going to do it in a classic water bath, which I have done one in a water bath before, but not. There are some different nuances to the way we're going to do this one as far as the baking goes. So that being said, before I forget. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to, and that way you'll know when my videos come out. If you want to take some time out of your day, which I greatly appreciate, to check out my videos, awesome. Thumbs up, thumbs down is always a good thing, but not necessary in my world. But they are nice to see. Comments are always appreciated, but please keep them civil, and nothing rude or mean. I don't mind a comment that, is debatable with me, but be nice about it. If you don't agree with something I've said or, the way I do something in my kitchen, that's fine. Let me know. If there's something you didn't like, let me know, but do it in a polite manner. We do have all age groups, that watch my channel, and we try to keep it civil here. We're about community and love and, and all that. Not to sound like an old hippie from the 60s, but we are. We're all about community on here, and we treat each other with respect. All right, so that being said, what are we going to do first? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our oven on 350 degrees, which I did. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our crust. So let me bring you down here where you can see some things instead of looking at my beautiful face. Well, somebody thinks it's beautiful. I'm married. I'd like to think that there's a few people out there. I know you guys are just stunningly gorgeous on a daily basis. All right, so there we are. Now we can see some things. All right, so as always, I have it written down. We have the recipe written down in the notebook. If we like it, we keep it. If we don't, we tear off the page and throw it away. I have yet to have one recipe that I throw away. So the first thing you're going to need is a spring-form pan. Spring-form pan is as follows. Has a clip on the side, comes apart. And then to put it back together, you just put it down on the thing and clip it. Now, they do come in varieties. You can do this in a 9-inch, 10-inch pan, depends on how deep you want your cheesecake. If you don't have a non-stick pan, I recommend you spray a little something in there. This one's not non-stick, so I sprayed a little something in there, whether it's vegetable oil, wipe it down with butter, whatever it takes. That's what you want. Next thing you're going to need is going to be a kind of a must, but not really. You could do this with a bag and a mallet and then a bowl and a fork, but we got to make the crust. So I'm going to use the food processor, which I have right here. I will give you what you need in measurement and in grams. So the first thing you're going to need, honest to God, 13 graham crackers, all right, which is 200 grams. And you're just going to want to break them up and put them in your food processor. All right, just as such. Get these broke up. Now, normally, if you're new to my channel, I would give you the ingredients for the whole recipe right in the beginning. But this is kind of a two-parter as far as what we need to do. So I'm going to split it up. All right, so we got our graham crackers in there. You need absolutely a half a teaspoon. It's 0.013 of a gram, so unless you got a really good scale, it's just going to be a half a teaspoon. It doesn't weigh on a normal scale. Speaking of which, scales are important for baking. Now they're not completely necessary, but they are important. I'll show you mine. I use this scale for everything baking, and it cost me like 12 bucks online. It's a good scale. You don't need an expensive scale really, unless you're cooking or baking professionally. The next thing you'll need is a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. All right, we'll just sprinkle that in there so it's not all in one thing. Now, by packed, I mean when you scoop it out of wherever it is you keep your brown sugar, you're pushing it down into the bowl. It's very soft, so it stays a little fluffy in the bowl, and you won't get a true 1/4 cup. All right, the last thing we'll need is just a pinch of salt. All right, well, it's not the last thing we need. There is one more ingredient, but it's the last thing for this step. And you're just going to put a pinch of salt in there. It's about 1/8 of a teaspoon or half a gram of salt, but literally just pull a pinch out with these 3 fingers and sprinkle it in there. You don't need much. So after we do that, we'll put our lid on. We'll plug in. And my food processor isn't plugged in. The reason for that, in case you knew, is because I've got little fingers that run around here with Abby, and we're also like the neighborhood block party house for kids. And we don't want somebody coming by here and accidentally turning it on and hurting themselves or making a mess or anything like that. So I plug in at the last minute. And then we're just going to pulse this to get it all broken up and put together. All right. See, that didn't take long at all, and that was in real time. So we got our graham crackers, and we'll check it. Now let's pulse it a couple more times. We're not quite there yet. All right, now I think we're in good shape. Yeah, and you want it to be like in a cornmeal state. Not, you don't want any giant chunks in there. It's okay to have little chunks, but not giant chunks. So then the next thing we're going to need is 4 tablespoons of melted butter. Okay, we're going to put that in there. But you want to get all your graham crackers broke up, and you want to get all that brown sugar and salt and cinnamon mixed together also before you put your butter in, because this is what's going to form our crust. And then we'll just put our lid back on, and we'll pulse that a few times. Now all we're looking to do is coat everything with the butter. All right, I think we are in good shape. So, and you'll know if you're in good shape if you can grab your see how it sticks together? You know, and that's what you want. You want it to be able to stick together a little bit. So, after that, we're going to put it in, we'll unplug our blender, our food processor, and we're just going to pour this into the pan. Like such. You want to get it all in there. Alright, let me get this off to the side here, get it out of the way. All right, we're done with the processor. That's all we need to do. So now we just got to take our crust and we're going to mold it into our pan like such. Yes, ma'am. Oh. We're going to mold our crust into the pan. Sarah's around the corner. Wow. Watching me bake. Which is okay. That's how you learn, right? So it doesn't have to go all the way up the sides by any stretch of the imagination. And then once you get it, in a decent shape, I mean, it doesn't have to be a perfect shape. Yeah, that's right. Nobody's perfect. Yeah. Got that in there. We're going to take my hands and clean them off. And we are going to find a flat, inanimate object. This will work. And we're just going to push this down. Okay, we want to pack it as good as we can. And get it nice and, as even as we can and as flat as we can. And like I said, how high you bring it up the sides is up to you. I'll show you here in just a second what I'm talking about. I guess it just depends on how thick you want your crust. But you want to try to push it into those corners. Hands down, into the corners. All right. All right, and that's what we're looking like right there. See how I got it up the edges? It's not perfect, not by any means. I don't want it to be. I suppose if I sat here and worked on it for an hour or so, it would be perfect. But yeah, I want to enjoy the cake eventually. I don't want to, I don't bake to win contests. I don't bake to sell. I just bake because I like to bake. And the more I do it, the better I'll get, just like you. But you always want to try to be good. So now, what are we going to do next? We're going to shut the door to the cabinet. That's the next thing we're going to do. Now, I've got that ready to go. I've got my oven set at 350. I'm going to put that in my oven for about 10 minutes. You'll start to smell it. Once it starts to smell nice and rich, it should be done. But I'm going to say 10 minutes. It may be 8 minutes. It could be 11 minutes. But the standard I know in my oven for most graham cracker crusts is 10 minutes. And that's also what the recipe calls for. So I'd shoot for 10 minutes. So as soon as I get this in the oven, we will start making the mix. All right? I'll see you here in a second. All right. So it's been 10 minutes. We got our crust out of the oven. There we are. See how it's got a nice golden brown texture to it? That's what we're looking for. So we're going to set this aside to cool. All right, that's the next step. Set aside to cool. And, running out of room. In case you didn't catch any of last week, we're in the middle of packing because we're getting ready to move, hopefully here in the next couple weeks. Well, it'll be a week now. And so everything's kind of a colossal wreck. All right, so let's go ahead. While that's cooling, we're going to make our filling. All right, so let me get your camera turned down here so that way you can be back in the game again. All right, there we are. Ooh. Jeez, Pete. I'd fire my cameraman, but my cameraman is me. So now it's time to make our filling. For this, I suppose you could use a hand mixer, but I don't you would have to be very careful because we're not going to want to incorporate a whole lot of air in this. But for this, I'm going to use my stand mixer and I'm going to use my whisk attachment. So the first things we're going to put in here are 4 blocks of cream cheese. 4 blocks. 8-ounce packages. We need 4 of them. We're just going to toss those in there. Boom. Like such. Alright, then the next thing we need, I'll have to get my ingredients list for. I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but you never know. Alright, so we are going to whip the cream cheese, and we need 3/4 of a cup of sour cream, which I did not get out yet, so that's okay. We can get it out now. Ugh. Get the sour cream out. Maybe. There we go. 3/4 cup measuring cup. Get it out. Or we'll do the 1/2 cup and 1/4 cup. Because I don't know why, but my measuring cups didn't come with a 3/4 cup. Although I don't know of any measuring cups that come with a 3/4 cup. If you happen to know of one, let me know, because that would be awesome. I would love to have a, and it has to be a dry one. I mean, I know with the wets, I mean, like my one that we use for milk and stuff like that, I know we can do that, yeah, but I've always looked at sour cream as a dry ingredient, not a wet ingredient. So, yeah, that would be something you could, yeah. I don't know. If you know different, let me know. Ugh. Open up the fresh tub. Does your guys' house go through a lot of sour cream? Because we seem to go through a fair amount of sour cream here. Alright, there is a 1/2 cup. And then my 1/4 cup. I inevitably forget one ingredient in every video. I don't know why that is. That's alright. That's kind of human nature, I think, to some extent. And we'll get that in there. Alright, so 3/4 cup of sour cream and 4 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. So that's what we want to put in there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to let this run. It's going to take a couple minutes, but first I'm going to lock this in, and I'm going to plug it in. So once again, little fingers, and we're going to mix this until it's completely smooth and blended. Now you want your cream cheese to be at room temperature. All right, all your dairy should be at room temperature. I'm getting away with it with the cream cheese because it's creamy enough it'll mix, but if you're or with the sour, I'm getting away with it with sour cream because it's already really creamy. But cream cheese, if you don't let it sit at room temperature, you'll have clumps. Yeah, and that can pose a problem. All right, well, I'm gonna let this run for a minute, and then when we're done with that, we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so we let this mix for about 3 minutes. We're good and creamy. Now, one thing I didn't mention beforehand is we want to get our bowl scraped down, maybe a couple times while this is running. And it's going to take 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, you want to get in there, make sure there's not any lumps or bumps or, anything like that. We want a nice smooth batter, which we have. But we want to make sure it's good. So you want to get in there, and as I did this is probably about the 3rd time, 4th time I've scraped the bowl. And you don't want to mix it on high speed. We're not looking to put a bunch of air in there. Also, don't know if you noticed, remember a couple weeks ago I said something about getting a glass bowl? Got one. That way we can see what's going on in there, and we don't have to rely on trying to look down into the steel. All right, and I have found these glass bowls are bigger than the steel bowls. All right, so we got those 2 wet. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to add our sugar in. All right, and our sugar is 1 cup or 200 grams. And then we're going to add brown sugar, and this is packed dark brown sugar. All right, so light brown sugar went into the crust. Dark brown sugar is going into the cheesecake itself. And you want to make sure it's packed, which means when you scooped it out, here, I'll show you right quick. I'll use this. Why not? All right, so right here's my half a teaspoon. So when I scoop it up like that, I'm going to pack it down in. That way it fills. Brown sugar is soft. You know, it's soft, so it stays kind of, I don't want to say fluffy, but fluffy. You know, and you'll have air pockets in there. So you want 3/4 cup or 150 grams of dark brown sugar. And when you put it in here, don't just dump it in one spot. Kind of take it out and break it up around in there. That way, because brown sugar always has clumps. You know, you want to make sure you get as many of those clumps out as possible. Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, I know why it is. I have learned that brown sugar is made with molasses. And molasses will just naturally, it just allows the sugar to clump. It's literally just sugar and molasses. All right, so we got those two things in there. Rinse off my hand real quick. There is that. Towel. Sugar. And then we're going to need a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of salt. Throw that in there. All right. So we got that. So the next thing we're going to do now is pretty much what we just did. We're going to mix this on low. All right. We're going to continually scrape, right? And what we're looking to do is dissolve most of this butter and get it back to a smooth, creamy consistency, at least as close as possible. So we're going to put that on low. We don't want to incorporate any air, so we don't really want to take it much above low, maybe medium low. So if you have a KitchenAid, it would be number 2. And we're just going to let this ride for about 3 to 5 minutes and scrape down the bowl about, well, as often as you feel the need to, but I'm going to do it probably about every 30 seconds. All right, well, when this is done, we'll move on to the next step. All right, so we did about 4 or 5 minutes on this. The next thing we need to do is we're going to add 5 eggs, 5 large eggs, or 50 grams each out of the shell. And we're going to put them in one at a time and mix them in. Yeah, we want to get them incorporated well. I know we put everything but the kitchen sink in this but the pumpkin, right? Yeah, but we're getting there. We're getting there. We've only got a handful of spices left and the pumpkin to put in. This cheesecake, it appears, like I said, I've never made this cheesecake before, so I don't know, but it appears kind of labor intensive. And I mean, it is a process. It is not for the faint of heart, I don't think. Yeah, but I think it'll be well worth it in the end. All right, so we got our eggs in there and well incorporated. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take 2 tablespoons of flour, which is 38 grams, 2 tablespoons of flour, and I have a little sifter, baby sifter right here, and I'm going to pour that in there. We're going to want to sift this flour in, all right, and we're going to do that real quick here. We don't want to clump it all in because, like in a normal cake, or something like that, you would just pitch them in and call it a day. But you don't want to do that. You want to sift it so that way you don't have big lumps in there. Big lumps is the enemy when it comes to a cheesecake. Your cheesecake, you want it to be as creamy as possible. So we got our flour in there, and we're going to mix that in, just incorporate it in. once you get on low, you always run the risk of it flying up on you. So always start out on low. All right, we got that in. We are incorporated, which is what we wanted, well mixed in. Now we're going to take a minute and scrape our bowl down again, as you should. Yeah, scraping is not the enemy. Scraping the bowl, making sure you got everything. Making sure it's all well blended and incorporated. That's the name of the game. As if you don't, inevitably what will happen is you'll end up with a chunk of something somewhere that somebody besides you will end up eating. And then they'll be like, oh, what is this? You're not, you didn't mix this very well. I know, I've been there several occasions. My mortal enemy is the salt. Anytime a recipe calls for salt, I seem to end up with a salt clump. Alright, so we got our eggs in there, we got our flour in there. So spatula down, put that back on. And the next thing we need to add is the vanilla. We're just gonna turn it on low. We just want to get this quickly incorporated while it's running. All right, we got that incorporated. We're in good shape. Now, here comes the grand finale of things we need to put in here. You will need 1 cup of pumpkin puree. That is not the pumpkin pie in a can. It is pumpkin, just straight pumpkin puree in a can. Mine's not in a can because we make our own, and we made our own. We'll make more here in about another month once we go buy pumpkins to decorate at the new house. At the end of fall, we'll take the ones that aren't starting to rot or bruised or anything like that, or the ones we carved, and we'll make more pumpkin. I'll show you how to do that down the road. But you want 1 cup of puree, not pumpkin pie filling. You want the puree. It'll be in the baking aisle, same spot. We're gonna put that in there, and then we're gonna put our spices in. Now, if you have a pumpkin spice mix that you enjoy, you will need 1.5 teaspoons of that. But I'm going to use this recipe's spice mix, which is very close to the pumpkin spice mix I made in my spice mix video. We will need 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And all we're going to do is put that right on in there. And then we are going to mix this again. I know there's a lot of mixing in this. On a medium-low speed, and we're going to run it for about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes again, and until it's smooth and everything's incorporated. You want to make sure that your pumpkin is evenly dispersed. You may see some little bits of stuff that look like, oh my gosh, I got lumps. It's just pumpkin more than likely. And that's okay. It'll smooth out as it goes, I promise. All right, well, I'm going to let this run for 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so while that was mixing, I went ahead and did 2 things. I got a roasting pan out that will hold water, because like I said in the beginning, we're going to water bath this. And then my pan, I wrapped foil around it like 3/4 of the way up. You want to put foil on it, that way when we pour water in here, because we're going to pour water in our pan, and this is a baking technique used for cheesecakes. It's actually really common. But we don't want that water creeping into our springform pan and getting into the crust and the cheesecake. So we've got that set up and ready to go. I haven't got the water in there yet. All that's left to do is, now hopefully you didn't turn your oven off after we were done making the crust, because you're going to need it to bake your cheesecake. Because we're going to bake this at the same 350 degrees we baked the crust at. And yeah, and we're going to do it for quite a little bit. This is the part that hurts because you go through this, which doesn't take very long to do any of this. But we're going to pour this in. You know, like I said, I don't know if you can see it from there, but you know, there's little chunks of pumpkin here and there in the cheesecake, and that's okay. I mean, that's what you want. It's pumpkin cheesecake. So we're going to pour that in there, just like such. Get it almost full. Now, I do have leftover, and that is because the recipe is actually for a 10-inch pan. I don't have a 10-inch springform pan. All I have is a 9-inch springform pan. So what I'm going to do is I will put that in a seal-tight container. What's left in there, which isn't a whole lot, but it's enough. And I will do little mini cheesecakes out of them. Yeah. I have a fancy, it's essentially a weird-looking muffin tin in the bigger and decorative pieces. And I'll probably pour that and make some same crust, put it down the bottom of that, pour these on top of it, and bake them off. You know. Okay, so we got that in there. All right. Next thing we're gonna do is grab something to pour water in it with, which if I'd have been on top of my game, I would have had it out already, but I didn't. Now we don't have to fill it clear up to the rim. I'm just going to put a few cups of water in here, and what this does is it creates kind of a steam that surrounds the cheesecake, and it'll keep it from cracking. When it comes to baking cheesecake, low and slow is the way to go with temperature. So you don't want to crank it up high, you know, and you don't want it to dry out. What happens a lot of times with cheesecakes, depending on how you bake them, because remember, like on the last one we made, we started out at a high temperature, and then after 15 minutes or so, we kicked it down, and then just let it bake real slow. So let me get this in the oven, and we'll talk about what we need to do. All right, hold on for me 1 second. Get this in the oven. We got our water bath ready. Pan is lined with aluminum. And we're just going to set it in there like such. All right. So here's what we got to do. We're going to bake this for an hour and 20 minutes, I believe. Bake for an hour and 20 minutes, which seems like a lifetime, but it's an hour and 20 minutes. We'll set our timer for an hour and 20 minutes. Okay, so we're going to let it bake for an hour and 20 minutes. It's got timer set, 350 degrees, low and slow. And then after the timer goes off, I am going to just turn the oven off. I'm not going to open up the door. I am just going to leave it sit there for about an hour. That way it cools down slowly. All the steam has a chance to finish cooking it just right, baking it just right. Now this is according to the directions, all right? We're going to leave it sitting there for an hour, which in my mind makes sense. And then we are going to pull it out, cover it, which when I come back, we'll pull it out and we're going to cover it, but then we got to let it sit in the fridge a minimum 8 hours, you know, preferably overnight. So when I come back, we'll pull it out of the oven and I'll show you how to wrap it and prepare it to put it in the fridge. Okay, so we got the cheesecake baked. We baked it for an hour and 20 minutes in the oven, per the directions. And I turned the oven off. I did not open up the oven door, and I just let it sit there for an hour. So now we're about to take it out and see what we got going on here. That's nifty. Let's probably get a pot holder, pan holder, because even though it's been in here for an hour, it is still rather warm, which kind of surprises me a little. Oh, we did get a little crack in it, so it didn't completely hold true. Let's think about what could have caused that for a second. And it's not a bad crack by any stretch of the imagination. Matter of fact, I'll bring you down so you can see it. Let's bring you down here. Heck, you can barely see it on on your end. Oh yeah, you can. All right, so right here's our crack. And that's all right. Hey, that doesn't bother me one bit. A little crack like that, whatever. But what could have caused that? I'm gonna guess because my pan is pretty dry. I didn't get enough water in it. Because I've got a little bit of water left, but not a whole lot, and it might have evaporated after we turned the oven off. Because I know I watched it while it baked itself. The hour and 20 minutes, and there was water in there. I could see it blowing with the convection fan. So I have a feeling why it sat in there for that hour, the water evaporated, and it caused me to have a little bit of a crack. But you know what? I'm not unhappy with that at all. So, that being said, what do we do next? So we've got it down to pretty much room temperature, or at least close. We let it sit there for an hour. We're going to do a little more work. First, we're going to take it out of that pan. We're done water bathing it. We don't need it in the pan anymore. Things to look for with a cheesecake, because it's sat in there for an hour. We don't have the jiggle in the center, but see how it's got a nice, it's like a waterbed feel to it, or wiggle to it. That's what we want. That tells me it's done. If I can sit here and smack it, it's like a semi-firm waterbed from back in the day. So what we're going to do with this is move the oil away from the paper towels. So I can get to the paper towels. We're going to take the paper towels and we're going to lay it over the top. All right, let me get a different paper towel. That one's torn in the center. There we go. All right, get one that's not torn because these are the little sheets. So we're going to put the paper towel on there like this. Like I said, this is what I watched him do. Let's get that foil off of there. This is something new I learned, so we'll see how it turns out doing it this way. That paper towel, got a little bit of water running out here. The important thing is we did not get any water up in this lip. Put our paper towel down. Now, you're asking yourself, why are we putting a paper towel on? I'll tell you here in a second. We're going to get some cling wrap out. And we're going to put this over top of the paper towel. Whoa. Maybe. Brought the roll out of the... Not a very professional saran wrap job, is it? That's alright though. It doesn't have to be professional. It just has to cover the cake. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the fridge. Now you're asking, why the paper towel? I'll tell you. Because I thought this was an ingenious idea when I saw it. But it's still just a touch warm, and as it cools, the paper towel will keep it, will suck up that moisture that comes off the cake. That way it doesn't collect on the saran wrap, and it'll keep the cake moist, fresh as it cools in the fridge. Because what ultimately happens on things you don't cover in the fridge, they get a skim coat or they get hard. If you want to experiment and see what I'm talking about exactly, grab an egg, open it and crack it, put it in a small bowl, and set it in the fridge. It'll go from being nice and glossy, shiny, yellowish orange, and a nice glossy white. It'll get this film over the top of it. Same thing happens with cakes and pies. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this in the fridge, and I'm going to let it sit. In this case, it's going to be overnight because we are at the later half of the day, and I don't plan on being up 6 to 8 more hours. You can let it sit 6 to 8 hours in the fridge, and then pull it out and have at it. Best practice would be to leave it overnight. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it overnight, and don't tell the missus, but I'm probably going to share a piece with you when I get up in the morning. So that being said, I will see you in the morning for pumpkin cheesecake and coffee. All right? See you here in just a little bit. Okay, guys, it's the next morning. Cheesecake has been sitting in the fridge all night with the paper towel on it and the saran wrap. I went ahead and removed that. Sarah's at school. Abby and Chris are still in bed. And I'm about to have some pumpkin pie cheesecake for breakfast. Hopefully this turned out really good. I went ahead and got it out of the fridge, got the paper towel taken off of it, got the saran wrap taken off of it. Now, with that, not that it damaged the cake by any means, but the paper towel itself, where I didn't have very good saran wrap to wrap my cake with, the towel did do its job. It collected the moisture, but it also fell on top of the pie. But the pie turned out just fine, so we're good. Matter of fact, I'm going to bring you down right now so we can see it. We're going to take it out of its pan and put it on a plate, and then we're going to make some homemade whipped cream that I can dollop a little bit on top of it, put the rest in the fridge. But see, like I said, here's our cake. You know, just like it did now. You notice it came away from the edges, so that way when we pop it, the springform pan, just like that, it'll come away. It came away from the edges. See, we're nice and spinny. So let's go ahead and pull that off. And there, my friends, is our pumpkin cheesecake. Now, I did lose a little bit of the edge. One thing I did forget to do, and I should have thought about it prior to, was when it was still hot, when we took it out of the oven, I should have ran a offset spatula or a knife around the edge of the pan, so that way the crust wouldn't stick to it. So see, I mean, like I said, I'll show you my mistakes, but there's some of the crust, and it came out of it right there. Now, is it horrible? No, there's still plenty of crust there to have at. Yeah, so we're in good shape. So how do we get this off of the bottom of the springform pan? That's a good question. I have an answer. You can use a knife. I'm going to use a spatula. And all we're going to do is take it, put it in between the base, put it in between the base right there, and we're just going to go around and get it and loosen it from the base. And then we're going to slide it onto our pan, or our plate, as the case may be. Boom, transferred. Can't beat that. Nope. Got a little bit of the bottom on there. Oh, that is good and very pumpkin-y. All right, so we're going to set this aside for a second, and we're going to make a whipped topping. We're going to make some whipped cream. All right, now, I'm not putting a stabilizer in this whipped cream, which means it's not going to last forever. It'll last like a day or so before it breaks down. I imagine by morning it will break down. Let's go through the ingredients of our whipped cream. And it's just got 3 ingredients. But there are some key things to look for, or key things to do. You are going to need a 1/4 cup of powdered sugar, sifted. Remember, powdered sugar is always clumpy, so you want to run it through a sifter first. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and then in the fridge, and it's still in the fridge, and I'll tell you why in a second, is 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. Now, everything you do, you want it to be cold. That will help produce the best whipped topping. So instead of using the glass bowl, I'm going to use the metal bowl. I'm going to use the whisk attachment for my stand mixer. You can do this with a regular hand mixer too, but you want everything to be cold. So what I did was I put my metal bowl in the freezer and I put my whisk attachment. So if you were using a hand mixer, you'd want to put your beater blades in the freezer along with your bowl. Use preferably a metal bowl, but if you don't have a metal bowl, whatever bowl you're using, put it in the freezer. You want that all to be cold. You want everything to be cold. So I'll get my now very cold metal bowl out. I mean, you can see it's cold. It's got the ice on the sides and everything. Put my whisk attachment on. We're going to put our heavy whipping cream in there. And our powdered sugar. We'll plug in our mixer. Like I said, little hands. And I'm going to start this on low and work my way up to high. Now, you just don't want to overbeat it. We're looking for kind of medium heats. When we get the soft peaks, we'll add our vanilla. Okay, we're starting to thicken up, so what we're going to do, go ahead and add our vanilla in. And voila. You have whipped cream. Better than any Cool Whip, and it takes like 30 seconds. Alright, put that there. And then we're gonna, while I'm thinking about it so I don't forget, we're gonna go ahead and put it in the bowl. Preferably one with a lid. And like I said, this whipped cream won't last as long because we didn't put a stabilizer in it. But I don't really have a need for a stabilizer. And as far as the cheesecake goes, you don't really have to have whipped topping on it. Or if you don't want to make your own, you can go buy store-bought whipped topping. Whatever you like, whatever works for you. So you don't have heavy cream, but you got some whipped topping sitting in the freezer, or a can of whipped cream that is in the sprayer, which is awesome. We used to use that all the time, and we would spray it in our mouths. But here is our whipped topping, fresh from the factory of Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Oh, that tastes so good too. Now, I mean, you can add a little more powdered sugar to it if that's your gig. Completely up to you. So let's move this off to the side. Now that we got our fresh whipped topping. You could also get fancy if, like, say you were serving this or taking it to a party. You could then put that in a piping bag and do a little design around the edge of your cheesecake. There's a million and one possibilities, to make it your own. Now, I personally, since this is just for the family, am going to, and I'm not that good with a piping bag, I am literally just going to dollop this onto my cheesecake. or put a spoonful onto my cheesecake, I guess would be the answer. All right, so let's get a good knife that I can warm up. It's always important to warm your knife up. Run it under some hot water. Get it nice and hot. Nice and hot. Grab a paper towel to dry it off with. Dry it off. And then make our first cut. Now I can tell you by accidentally getting the batter on my fingers yesterday, this is a relatively rich cheesecake. It's very pumpkin-y in flavor, which is good. It's supposed to be. And the first thing Chris said to me yesterday after we got done putting it in the fridge, she said, that's a little dark. And then she stopped and she goes, oh yeah, it's supposed to be. It's pumpkin. Which is what we want. All right, so we'll reheat. Get rid of the knife. Was able to make both of my cuts. We'll get a plate to put it on. Get our little handy dandy pie tool here. Serving tool. Get it up underneath there. There we are. Oh, that looks amazing. Put that in there. There's what the inside of our cake looks like. Maybe pack that back in the side there, so you got a better look. There we are. It looks good. I think it turned out very well so far. And there is our piece of cheesecake. Nice and dense. Looks good. I had a fork out, but I don't see it. That's right. Get a spoon to dollop the Cool Whip on there with. And then all we're going to do is take some of our Cool Whip and put it on the top. Just like such. So, let's see how she tastes. I think it's going to be incredible. Get a little bit of that Cool Whip. Yeah. It tastes just like a pumpkin pie. It's got the tartness of the cream cheese, just like a cheesecake does. But the pumpkin flavor is undeniable. Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely awesome. Wow. It tastes like pumpkins in fall. That's the best way to describe it. Is pumpkins in fall. I'm kind of speechless. It's really good. Really, really, really good. So, things we got to remember for the next time. We need to make sure we put just a hair more water in our pan. And like I said, it had to happen while it was sitting in the oven is when it had to have dehydrated. It evaporated all the water in the pan. Well, most of it, as you saw earlier, there's still some wet spots. Only because I watched it while it was actually baking. I always turn the light on my stove so that way I can see what's going on in there through the glass. And because I use a convection oven, I could see the air circulating because the water was moving. So I know there was still water up in that hour and 20-minute point. But I think when I turned it off, it was just sitting in there. Water just evaporated. All right, which is okay. Now I know. So the next time I make this in this particular pan, the pan I use for the water bath, the roasting pan, I know, take it up to about halfway on the springform pan, and that way I know I got enough water if I'm going to do it that way. It was still relatively warm when I brought it out. I did let it sit out on the counter for about 10 more minutes before I put it in the fridge, just to give it a second to get a little closer to room temperature. But but I do like the idea of the paper towel and the saran wrap. We'll definitely use a better quality saran wrap next time. Not that there's anything wrong with that saran wrap, it just didn't stick well to the metal. Letting it sit overnight is always best practice. I think the more water in the pan will keep it from the crack. Before I cover next time, I'm going to run an offset spatula or a knife around the edge so that way the graham cracker crust doesn't stick. Not that it's stuck horribly, as we saw. It still looks very edible, still looks very good. And I think that's all. All in all, I think we did a great job with this cake. It tastes good, and that's the important part. It's got a nice, rich pumpkin taste to it. It definitely has the feel of fall. It has good color. It's got good texture. It's super creamy. The crust turned out very good, very tasty. I'm not arguing that by any means. So all in all, I'm going to call this a success. I will write my notebook the things to remember, how much water to put in the water bath, running the offset spatula around, and then I'm going to keep this. So that being said, try this. You won't fail. There is nothing hard about this recipe. Don't be scared of the water bath. If you're like, oh, it's water bath, it's not. Trust me, if I can do this, I know you got this because you are way better at this than I am. So that being said, try this. Let me know what you think. Like, Brian, that was a success. I love it. Send me some pictures. I got Mr. Smith's Kitchen will be up and running on Facebook here in the next couple days. And you can find me, Mr. Smith's Kitchen, on Instagram. Let me know. Let me know down in the comments below if you try this. If you didn't like it, let me know. Like, Brian, it was horrible. I don't even know why you baked that or why you even brought that into my life. That's fine. Hey, I get it. Not everything is for everybody, right? So, that being said, I love you. I love you very much. Tell somebody else you love them, and you love them very much. It's going to make their day a whole lot better and make you feel better. Try this cheesecake. Until then, I will see you next week. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, no idea what we're going to cook or bake, not as of yet. I'll let you know Tuesday, but we might be in the middle of moving, so things might get a little chaotic. I am going to try to can a little more this week, so and hopefully I can get some video of it. That may not happen. Like I said, we're getting down to crunch time as far as packing goes and getting ready to just try to get everything over there in a day or two. Moving a family of 4 that's been together 20 years, there's a lot of stuff to move, so it takes a lot of planning. But hopefully we'll get to that. Tuesday's video may be a tour of our new house. Who knows? Who knows? We'll talk about whatever it is. All right. I love you. See you next week.